So many things. You know, we are live now, but I've got to fix our video because it's like really, we're small and we're in the middle of the screen. So we're going to fix this. And then what I'm going to do, Dan, this will be awesome. I can do the countdown and we can take off from there. And I'm so far behind, aren't I, in my video?
Yeah.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Wait, am I going by your hearing or by what I'm seeing?
I'm going to just restart my camera. Maybe my camera's just being fussy. I don't know what's going on. All right. Yes, no? Okay, I seem to be back.
Better, much better.
Okay.
Much better. So we're here. We've survived another week of isolation.
We did.
Our wives have not killed us. Our kids have not decided to smother us. They may have decided. They didn't.
My cat tried to. For some reason, my cat has gotten into this whole, I can crawl up on top of you and lay on you. So this has been my project for the week, building fence. I am going to be such a great fence person pretty soon.
There we go.
I'm building the straightest fence in the whole wide world. Actually, I had to pull a couple of posts up because it wasn't quite straight enough. All these things are so DJ related.
They are, but I bet you they work for the Weekend Handyman show.
Well, they did, and they do, and as as Howie and I were chatting a little bit, this is that time where we're doing some of these other projects and working around our house or someone else's house, and doing things because we've got some time on our hands.
So I'm just curious, do you have while we're completely off topic,
yeah.
Do you have a video on creating a French drain?
A what? French drain?
French drain?
I know.
You never heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so we'll talk later then.
Yeah, that's a term I have not heard used in Central Minnesota.
You Minnesotans probably just
we
call
don't
it like a New York drain or something. I don't know.
Could be.
So anyway,
let's jump into the topic. We are
here. We are ready for another show, and I think tonight's show, I'm kind of excited about it in some ways because this type of topic is really what brought me into the whole fold with you in the beginning. For those of you that don't know the story, I'm a teacher Monday through Friday, and now it's like Monday through Sunday. But besides that, I reached out to John and saying, hey, there's not a lot of talk out there for the part-time guys. What's really going to happen here? I'd love to hear that voice. And John goes, well, do you want to write about it? And the rest, as they say, is history. So tonight we're going to talk about some topics as far as how to be prepared for being part-time, because whether we come out of this in 2 months or whether this gets pushed back a whole nother year, realistically, there's lost income.
Yep.
And I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. You are losing income some way, shape, or form, whether you're getting a loan or a grant or whatever you've done, that's fine, but there's lost income. So you've got to figure out a way to maybe help make it up. And I think, especially since we don't know when this is fully going to end and everything's going to open up fully and we're going to be able to go back to life as we know it, a part-time job, or I shouldn't say a part-time job, but making your DJ company become the part-time aspect, I think is a wise decision.
And I don't want people to think that we're being, the Debbie Downer thing tonight is oh, you're just so fatalistic. What tonight, or what we're experiencing right now, is a really crappy thing. There's no question about it. What we want you to take from this is that diversifying. We've talked about, people talk about diversifying your income, and this was a really great example of why that's important, because we are all in the entertainment. I'm diversified. I've got a photo booth, I've got uplighting, and I've got DJ. That's not diversifying, because that's all in the entertainment world. And obviously, you can see one little, one bat, whatever that joke is going around, takes you all out. So that's an important part of this process, is that maybe as you go forward, that this is something that you need to do, is to diversify where your income streams are coming from, so you will be more virus or catastrophe resistant, for lack of a better way to describe it. And this could even go as far as if a tornado goes through, a hurricane goes through, and many of you who are living in those areas where they have the hurricanes go through, you have done things to kind of prepare yourself a little bit. Obviously, if a big enough one comes through, there's just nothing you can do to be prepared for that. And the revenue streams, but to be thinking about that and to be kind of mentally preparing, because again, this isn't to be a downer or to be trying to be scare tactics, but they are talking about things like this because we have had variations of this happen, that they could be happening every few years. So we may in our lifetime see, maybe not to this level, maybe it is at this level, but we may see this 2 or 3 more times in our lifetime. We need to be thinking about that and preparing. So, moving back to a part-time position, I was thinking about this, Dan. There was this fear, and you and I had the conversation probably about a year ago. You were kind of hemming and hawing. Should I move to a full-time DJ at that time? And there was a fear factor and such with that. My question is there's a fear factor that way because you're leaving the steady income you're used to. But now let's take it the other direction. If a person is moving from a full-time business to a part-time situation and finding other employment or other revenue stream, what's the fear factor like, do you think, for that?
Well, I think there's a huge one, because especially, I think the fear factor is more for those DJs who have been in the position before where they've had that full-time job and the DJing was part-time, that I failed. I'm going back. I'm going to work for the man again. Mm-hmm. Like that mentality, and just a fear of failure, a fear of being trapped, even though that's not the case. Going back to that feeling of, working full-time, part-time. Oh, I really want to go to full-time. Can I do it again? Like if I go back, do I ever have an option of coming out of this again? And so, yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely that fear of, man, I'm taking 20 steps back. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, certainly that whole concept of failure. I could see that side of it. And the other I was kind of thinking is when we basically are self-employed, we have to answer to a lot of couples and a lot of bosses, but really we answer to one boss. If we decide that, I'm going to take an extra half hour for lunch, who cares? When we go to the point where we're now working for someone and we're having to answer to someone, I wonder how many people have created that whole anxiety around oh my gosh, somebody's going to be telling me what to do and how do I, and they're looking at that as a situation where there'll be, in essence, paralysis from that fear of, can I take orders from someone again? Mm-hmm. Or maybe even for the first time, I suppose. Yeah,
and especially, and that I think those that jumped right into this full time, right? Who came out of high school or came out of college and went right into this as a full time career. If they decide to take that step, there's a big fear as well. Like, I've only ever known working for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how on earth am I going to make that adjustment? Yeah.
I think one thing, my last time of working for someone was about 30 some years ago. And as I watch how my children and some other acquaintances and such here who are working, it would be the $10 to $15 an hour jobs, where they're working in retail at some level. It's interesting because how the bosses treat them or the managers treat them today is so much different than it was when I was in college and how I was treated by the bosses. And you mentioned, of course, being able to take orders from the boss. It's not like it was. My boss at one time could tell me, that I was being a complete, and use some colorful language. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. They can't do things. There's so many things they can't do now. And yes, I'm sure there are many bad bosses out there. And there's a lot that can find ways to make you feel bad. But the way things are today and the way the job market really was so open for a period of time, they were falling over each other to get a decent employee. And I think that's going to continue on. Once things open up and such, we get 6 months past opening up here, you're going to have businesses that are like, I need a decent employee, because there's going to be some people who weren't very good before and are not going to be any better after the fact. So that whole fear is I can see it, but I don't know if it's going to be a super valid thing, because I think the work ethic of someone in their 30s and 40s who's been out there and self-employed and is coming back to the working world, they're going to find it. My gosh, you're a go-getter. Holy cats, you're actually got all those things done. So it could be an interesting situation with that.
Definitely could work in their favor.
I would think so. So first off, I've got a few points here. Let's kind of take them as not in the order that I had them here, but let's talk about time. I think time is probably going to be the biggest thing. And what I had kind of a plan of how I want to do this was talk about the plan of making the transition and such, and then getting a business set up and then da-da-da. We'll get to all those points. We'll get to them. But time becomes a huge concern, because if you go, let's say even if a person is picking up a side part-time job and putting 30 some hours a week into it, or in your case, with a full-time teaching job, kind of talk a little bit about how you balance that time of the teaching job with a DJ business and with a family.
It's a very hard thing. And Day in the chat room hit on it. He was talking about, David talked about being a part-time DJ, and, part-time does not mean not professional.
Yes.
And Day's like, absolutely, usually feels like 2 full-time jobs. And I would say definitely in a lot of ways, I feel I have 3. I have my teaching, I have my DJing, and I obviously have my family duties, my family career, if you will. For what I've figured out, what has worked best for me, and to some degree, first off, you have to have an understanding partner, somebody that's going to come alongside with you. If you have that family correspondence, because when we're meeting with our couples, whether it's an online meeting, whether it's an in-person meeting, whatever happens to be the case, chances are you don't meet with them kind of in the same context you used to. It used to be, if you were doing this full time, you probably had an office of some sort, or you had the ability to meet during the day. So you still had your nights available and it was no big deal. Or if you were meeting them at night, it didn't matter. You were around during the day,
right?
Kind of swap it out. So I'm very lucky in the fact that my family gives me an opportunity. I usually try and keep, my meetings to 1 or 2 nights a week, usually around the same time. So I'm back in time for bed and all those kind of good things. But all of my other details, all of my extra stuff, email responses, follow-ups, paperwork, itineraries, all the other nitty-gritty type of business work, I'm doing after my family goes to bed. My kids are in bed by 8. I'm very lucky in that aspect. And my wife is usually in bed by 9. So once that hits, I kind of focus. I'm like, I got about an hour and a half before I start, drifting off. So I'm going to focus and hit it as hard as I can, as fast as I can. Which
it gets to be a really long day. And after a week of doing that, 2 weeks, a wedding season, we're going to jump right to our last topic we were going to hit is burnout. That becomes a real thing for you. How have you been able to keep from wanting to slap the next person who asks you for the YMCA.
Burnout becomes, but here's the funny thing. During wedding season, burnout becomes even harder, especially when you're dealing with events that are double wedding weekends. Because when you're preparing those finite details the week of, and I don't care how you prepare, you always have that week of stuff that you've got to handle and you've got to get prepared, and the list that you make and everything else. You're now doubling that amount. And there's no downtime that weekend for you to be able to catch up. But I get blessed in some aspects because this is part-time for me, that my Saturdays are my weddings and my Sundays are a rest day for me. And I don't have anything Friday night other than maybe going out for the rehearsal, depending upon what's going on.
Right.
And so I do have downtime surrounding around that to kind of say, okay, well, I can breathe now. I can rest. I can relax. This fall, assuming things open back up, I've got at least 4 weekends that I'm now doing Saturdays and Sundays because my spring events got moved to the fall.
Sure.
My burnout, I am so fearful. In fact, I'm planning right now that there are probably going to be a couple days that I'm going to have to take sick days from my full-time job, because knowing my body, I'm probably going to be, if I don't, I'm going to get physically sick.
Sure.
Like, because when you're running on adrenaline, if you've not been in this situation, when you run on adrenaline for so long, eventually when it does just like you get every sinus thing under the sun, and people who talk for a living, that doesn't exactly work too well.
Mm-hmm.
So looking for ways to kind of preload as much as I can during this time, during when I can't, but there's a lot of things I'm gonna hopefully take it a day at a time and breathe when I can.
So let's look at that fall schedule now. In your situation, you've got the full-time job, you've got the potentially Saturday and Sunday events. There's this thing called intentional neglect, where basically there's just some things that have to go to the wayside for a period of time during that window of time when you're that busy. What kind of things in your life are going to be kind of maybe falling away during that period of time that you can maybe get caught up to later once things slow down again?
My wife won't be watching this, so it's okay. I hate to say it, but in a lot of aspects, that's the one side. And this is an argument my wife and I often have, is that, when the season gets really busy, sometimes certain things that I normally would do go by the wayside. I'm not as caring because I'm not doing the dishes the way I always tend to do, or I'm not making dinner, 2 or 3 nights out of the week. We're not splitting those duties evenly because I've got to go down and get this paperwork done and stuff like that. So those are a lot of times the things that tend to fall by the wayside. The other thing that I've been able to do with my full-time job is automate a lot of that. I'm very blessed, and you'll hear me say this a bunch tonight, but I'm very blessed in the fact that the team that I work with, I'm on a team with 6 teachers. We all teach the same topic. We're all 7th grade math teachers, and we all work together. And our district is really pushed to be where we want as much in sync as possible.
Okay.
The advantage to that is it's a lot of work preparing us to get there. But the good side of that is once we're in that motion, we've worked together. So I don't have to create things on the fly because we've already had to talk about it and kind of create it in sync. So a lot of that stuff is going to be taken care of this summer when I do have some Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday type days open.
To work on it. Yeah.
So I would say those are you that are going to be in that position. When you step into that full-time position, look for the things that you can automate. And I don't want to say you want to put this new job on the back burner, because you do want to make a good impression, but look for the things that you can automate with that, so that you take a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from there. When it's all said and done, you've not taken a lot from anything.
And that definitely makes sense. And using some of the technology that's out there to assist in that, whether it's the meetings you are referring to that you used to be able to go face to face, now you might be doing them in the evening, and might be doing them instead of driving a half hour across town and a half hour back. Maybe now we're doing video on a couple of occasions. I think I think that's probably one of the biggest fears that a lot of full-time DJs have when it comes to that communication is that, oh, I meet with couples all the time and they're not going to want to do video chats. They're not going to want to plan this way, this, that, or the other thing. And I think that if there's anything that this little episode has shown us is that people can do things remotely, and people, as long as there's not somebody showing some pornography on Zoom because they hacked into the thing, people have gotten really comfortable of utilizing this technology to communicate, to plan, to work, what have you. So I think for the part-time person that is going to be utilizing this type of technology, this is actually a really good time because the people have been prepped on how it works.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I would say 6 months ago, last year, when I was meeting with couples and I would work with a couple couples who we just couldn't get our schedules to mesh, where traveling, like they were traveling from wherever they were and I was traveling. So it just wasn't going to work. So we did a couple virtual meetings, if you will, but it was always like, let's do FaceTime. Or I had one couple who there's I don't think it was Google Hangouts, but there was another one. And so it was like 2 or 3 other ones that we've tried. And that's where they went to. Now, like I've had a couple of my meetings for the summer weddings and I said, hey, we can do Zoom or we can do FaceTime. Let's do Zoom. Can you send me a link? Done. Like no hesitation whatsoever.
Yep.
Like, let's do it. Let's get it working and we're game.
Yeah. And I absolutely love that because it's a great tool. And in my case, every meeting's an hour drive. I've saved myself 2 hours on every wedding. Just a little side, John Haynes there mentions, anyone else enjoying this kind of downtime? We actually, Lori and I were kind of talking about this is that it's almost simpler. We're not running with kids. We're not doing, we're getting things done, little things here and there. And we've worked on some projects. As much as there's a lot of parts that kind of stink, there's parts of it that have really become kind of a sweet time to spend with the kids and with family and such. So, in more ways, I think I'm enjoying it, but then we haven't had anyone in our family get sick, as far as even in our extended family get sick. Obviously that would change the taste quickly, but so far it's been actually, a making ends meet. We still have toilet paper in the pantry. So we're good.
By the way, while we were still talking about burnout a little bit, David, as you were talking, I scrolled up and looked at his. He hits on something that's golden to kind of prevent. So if you're doing this as a part-time, he says, I shoot for a max of 2 weddings per month, occasionally 3. This is my balance. The DJ business doesn't turn into a second job and become a burden versus a joy. So he's being able to keep that enjoyment of what he has.
And that's really one of the angles. Yeah, I wanted to get to with that.
Yeah. That was something I actually started out when my wife and I first got married. I was working full-time radio. I was actually going to school for teaching, and I was working the weddings on the weekends, and then there was like no time. So I really at that point restricted myself to 2 times, to 2 weddings a month. Depending upon your situation, I definitely think that's something you should consider. 2, and like you said, 2, occasionally 3. That always gives you a full weekend off.
Mm-hmm.
A full weekend to recap or to spend time to, if you've got kids doing sports, to be able to see them, because a lot of times when there's Saturday events, it's like Saturday, they conflict. And it's like, you hate that. Mm-hmm. And so this gives you an extra weekend to be able to kind of work some of those things together. And also, gives you a chance to even just catch up with, your friends.
And your schedule in the fall would have been like that without all of these events having to move. Mm-hmm. And that's so, I mean, it's in a perfect world, you'd want to have that 2 or 3. Sometimes things happen.
Yeah.
So you mentioned automation, and of course, when we're planning, we can do video things and do that, but there comes a time where there's going to be the planning forms and contracts and different things such as that out there. And that's one of those areas, I think, especially now that it's kind of a downtime for us, we can utilize something like in a DJ event planner, which takes time to set up. And of course, depending upon how elaborately you want to use it. But I think there's tools out there like Event Planner that would be well worth a part-time person putting the time into, because there are those tools where they can enter their information and it generates a contract, and you can click and send the contract, and then they can click and sign the contract, and they can then click, and there's all these little things that would help time management on the paperwork side that really would make life a lot easier.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. You've got to look for, I hate to call them shortcuts because that oftentimes downplays
cheap and
their
feels
significance. But you get what I'm talking about. Like it speeds things up. And right now, whether you're thinking about the full-time job that you're going to get or you don't have it yet, either way, now's the opportunity that you have to put those things in place. And there are programs out there for speeding up even your setup of DJ Event Planner. And I'm blanking on the gentleman who has
Eric
one
Massengale
out there.
has got Eric Massengale's probably got one of the most elaborate systems out there. Aaron Abrahamson there out of Duluth, he also helps. And there was another person who's helping set up. But there's a few folks out there that Keith Clark from Canada is helping set up. I believe there's maybe 4 people that I've heard, but yeah, there's folks out there who will help you. And yes, it'll cost you a few bucks, but it would be well worth it because they've taken their time here and they've used it heavily before. They've taken their time to really get into it and then start to learn how to customize it for other people, and they can get you set up quickly. And that will turn out, yes, it costs money now, but that's going to be one that will pay you back over time with saved time in your DJ Event Planner. It starts at for a single op $10 a month, and a lot of people use between the $10 and the $20 a month, and it goes up to $50 a month. I just looked at the pricing plan here just a few minutes ago, and it's if you don't need a ton of these things, that $10 a month can get you quite a ways for what you're doing. So let's kind of talk about right now we're seeing a lot of people live stream. They're practicing basically. They're doing their mixing and such, but they're in essence practicing their mixing skills, keeping those sharp. When a person now has a day job and is doing that, and you've got something or a different source of income where you're working that during the day and then trying to where does practice even happen? Because you end up with there's only so many hours.
You're right. During your busy time, it definitely doesn't. I mean, you're for lack of better terms, you hate to say it, but you're practicing at the event.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to give that connotation, but the new song that came out, and you've got to play, and that somebody asked for it, and you maybe got in and set your cue points, but that's about all the farther you got. You just kind of run with it. You can't. Something like you said, something's got to give, and that's one of those things that practicing your mixing abilities. It takes time to set up, to hook it all together, and to get playing. I would rather spend time focusing on my NC abilities and making sure that those are a little bit more in tune, so that I don't sound like a bumbling fool in front of everybody.
Right.
If my mixes are, because I know I can beat mix the stuff together. If I don't have something perfectly in key because I didn't think about that and get it all set up ahead of time, probably not going to be as noticeable as if sorry, folks, let me start over again. And those are the types of skills that you can work on in the car on the way to the full-time job, on the way back, on the breaks that you might be given, all the little times that you possibly could work something in. You can just take a few minutes to work on your vocal skills.
Yeah, and I guess that would have been the direction, because when it comes down to wedding season, I'm not practicing. When it gets to school time, when we're doing things, that's a different world. Just because I want to have practice putting some of these sets together better. But for most weddings, the beat matching is nice, but I can do some of that on the fly. Mixing is great, but at a lot of weddings that just hasn't been a thing here. I'm not known for that. I'm known for more of the MC skills and such. So I would follow that that train of thought. That's the area I'd work on, which means that yes, I do read children's books even if my kids aren't around now. They're off playing video games or doing things, but we're still working and talking about working. CMB, eventually the economy will reopen. It's going to, in the situation, it's going to reopen, and then it's going to take X number of months before it's open enough for us to be back in business. It will get there. It's just a question of when. When is more than if. So we talked about automation. Where are we at? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what needs to change or does anything need to change when it comes to websites or social media from us being a full-time business to maybe more of a part-time? Is there anything that would jump out at you with that?
Yeah. One thing I would say, especially when it comes to social media, you still have to be intentional about your social media. You still have to make sure you're posting. And even during these times, you definitely want to make sure you're still posting, because you're not posting about the event. So they haven't heard from you. They haven't seen you, and they don't have the ability to go, oh, that guy's still around. I mean, what's going on? We're hearing different companies are closing up, not necessarily DJ companies, but we're hearing different, retail groups and everything else that are saying, you know what, we can't survive this anymore.
Yeah.
We're done. And so the last thing you want to be done or thought of is that happening with them. So you need those social media posts to be happening, but then websites. I mean, make sure that your website is ready to go. Make sure it's looking good, and you're probably going to have to change some of the wording on it. You can't say, first off, if you have the little chat box on the website that allows you to click on it and it'll pop up on your end and you can chat away with them, that's probably not something you're going to have activated now. John, what are some other things that you can think of?
Yeah, following that, one of the things I've got on my website is I have where they can click to the number and basically text me immediately. That kind of a thing. That instant service is probably going to be the biggest one, is that a person would have to either not have the call to action to, get a hold of me right now and I'll be back to you within 37 seconds. A person would have to somehow handle that in a better way, with the, hey, leave your email here and I'll get something over to you later within 24 hours or whatever it is, or you have this automated so that they put their email in and it sends them that packet of information. So then you don't even have to do anything. You've got to figure these types of things out of how you're going to do that, because the last thing you're going to want to do in this day and age is have hey, click there and it'll go right to Messenger and I'll be back to you within 3 minutes. And they click there, they go to Messenger, they do that, and I'm in the middle of painting a fence and I don't have any digital access with what I'm doing for another 4 or 5 hours. And then they're like, oh, this guy, what's wrong with him? He must be another one of those that are out of business. Yeah. And we made that. So I don't think, and I really think that coming out of this, that there's going to be a lot of people who, that, hey, this is what I do on the side. I'm a wedding entertainer on the side, and then during the week time, I do whatever. I don't think anyone is going to be like, oh, well, I'm looking down at you because this isn't your full-time thing. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that if you come across as a professional entertainer, the rest of it won't matter. They're going to still be interested in hiring quality entertainer. And Day, I don't even know if I would. Day mentions here nothing wrong with taking a full-time job today with the intention of quitting. I don't know if I would do that. And the reason I say that is the industry. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a level of established DJs. Some of them are going to leave the industry and not come back. Then whenever we've had kind of a recessionary period, this is when we have a lot of new startups, people who are like, oh, wow, I can buy 2 speakers and I can start up a system. I think we're going to have an influx of those coming in the next year or two. That typically in markets drives the price down or changes the view of people's perception of the value of DJ entertainment. It has happened in the past. It could happen again. And then we add to the fact if weddings all of a sudden get smaller because they can't invite as many guests for the next year and a half, that's going to depress the price. So it might be one of these situations that it may not be, you may not see enough value in being a full-time DJ for 3 to 5 years. I mean, there are some talks coming that we may be, this whole COVID virus thing, this may be with us for another 5 years. Obviously, if that's the case, life will go on and it'll be changed, but it might be changed that we may not see weddings of 400 or 500 people or what have you. And again, we just don't know. The idea of taking a job that I would know for surely or thinking, oh, I'm only going to have it for a year. I don't know if I would do that. I think I would probably want to be more safe and having that 2 streams of revenue until I had so much money in the bank that if I had neither of them for a couple of years, a person could survive. So
Well, and that's, I think you just kind of hit on something else that's a true benefit of what we're doing is if you have the right job, you have the right full-time job, the DJ, or you could even flip-flop it. I mean, either way, one of the two jobs becomes an extra for you, a
yeah,
way to pocket it in the bank and save for a time like this. I mean, we're having a situation where people are like, I didn't have enough to save me for 3 weeks, and now I'm going on 6. I don't know where things are going to come from. Um, and so I think it's kind of interesting that, that's been the case. And a lot of people have learned that you've got to have that nest egg a little bit different. And this would totally allow you to be able to do that if you can be able to balance both of them at the same time.
John, I want to address this one. Yeah, because getting that nest egg built up is such a Dave Ramsey thing. He'd be so proud of you there, Dan. John mentions the biggest thing to make sure you're in the social media highlights your willingness to work with your clients. Words of gold there. The second part, maybe even mention you're able to handle all types of events. I'm a huge proponent that you cannot be the greatest, or you can't be great at every event. I think that take David's first sentence about being, or excuse me, not David's, John. I'm sorry, John. There, David's just popped up in my thing. Taking that first sentence and then mention that how, if you would be talking about how you are so, that weddings are your specialty, and that you are the creative master in the wedding world, whatever. Focusing on the one that you want to do the most, I think, is so much more valuable than to say, music for all occasions. I think that gets, it's like, oh yeah, well, just like my iPad is music for all occasions too. I want to throw that out there, John. Nothing to be, it's a great thought. We've all had that thought at one time. My business card used to say, that music for all occasions. We all did it. It's just that once a person specialized in his first talking about your willingness to work with the couples and just in that realm is absolutely fabulous. Okay. So one area, and this is something I don't know if you had thought about, was the whole gear side of things. And as I was thinking about this and knowing how I have worked over the years, when I was in a full-time situation, there were many a times where something would happen. I would limp gear through events. I know that there's a light that doesn't work kind of right, and I would do fiddle with it, or maybe I had a speaker and a connection wasn't right. So I would get there and I would have to. There was literally one time when I had a port or a connection on the back of the speaker that wasn't right. So I'd basically take it apart and stick a wire in there and clamp it in there, and it was fiddling around with things to make things work. And I think as a part-time, when I have so many other plates I'm spinning in my life, my family plate, I've got the other job plates, and I've got trying to make these things work, that a person, I don't think we can overemphasize how important it is to have very, good quality, dependable gear that we're not going to have to be sitting there and fretting about on a regular basis.
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot, I mean, first off, as a professional, you don't want to have subpar gear. Pure and simple. Whether that's subpar in quality or whether that's subpar because damage or whatever that's been done to it, that you, as you said, making it limp along. You've got to be able to have something that's going to be there and something that's going to be dependable, because you also can't spend 3 hours on a Tuesday afternoon driving it across town or across the state to somebody that will actually fix it for you, and turn it around and get it back to you so that you might be able to have it that weekend. You might actually have to send it off to someplace, which is a whole nother potential issue. So you need to make sure that you're having what you need, and you need to have, I would say, a good solid replacement in the event that you have to send it off.
And having that replacement plan and the pieces available for peace of mind. Mm-hmm. That I have it, I've got that extra speaker in the truck or in the trailer, and I know it's there. And if something happens, I can go. I've got plan A, B, and C. I have these all worked out, and I even had it to the point where I had them sketched out. If I've got an event and things are crazy, it's like I went through with the wedding when we did these outdoor things. It's like, okay, plan A was this. If the wireless isn't working, then I'm going to run. I've got the wires here in this bag, and those are going to be that. And then if that doesn't work, then I'm going to do this, because when you get there, you don't know, and it's easier to have thought these out in advance and be prepared than to get there and have problems. So dependable gear and have it ready to go.
Now, I did think of gear, but I didn't think of it from the reason that you did. I thought about quick strike, quick setup.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're talking about time limitations, we can't get to an event 3 hours early and spend a bunch of time setting it up because we don't really have a lot of extra time to do stuff. So as a result, this is where designing a system that is plug a couple pieces together, screw a couple things together, and you're golden, becomes even more important. The quicker that you can get your setup going, whether that's you're practicing with it so you can find quicker ways to do it, or whether you're finding ways to combine a few of the elements to make it a faster speed. I mean, I've talked about my rig a lot of times. It's heavy as all get out anymore, but I plug in my speaker cables, I plug in a power cable, I plug in my computer, and I can be going in from car to venue in 20 minutes.
Nice. Yeah, that whole time and the gear thing, I didn't even, it was a different angle. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that is so important, and that's something that I've really strived to do. And that meant in my case that my light show is either gone away because I'm not using it, or it's gone to something so incredibly quick and simple that all the intelligent moving head fixtures sit. Yeah, it's like, oh, when were those used last? Well, unfortunately, they were used last spring, and some of those lights now will be probably sitting for 2 years between uses. I might have to pull them out and oil them, or talk to Howie and see how you take care of lights. How do you store lights that they don't have problems down the road? So, and I think one of the big things to keep in mind, if you're in a situation where you're thinking you might need to diversify that income stream, is that there's absolutely, I like to Shani's statement, there's no shame in her game when she's talked about things. And this is one of those situations. There's absolutely no shame in having to step back and do something. You're doing ultimately what's in the best interest of your family or yourself personally, so you can survive another day. If you can't put food on the table, or can't keep the roof over your head, it doesn't matter how cool your sound system is or how great your website for your DJ company is. If you're homeless, you're in a tough situation. So do what you need to do. And if that means finding a second job, I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. And a lot of us will be doing that. I mean, that's something that, as we get into summer and if things are looking like it's the rest of 2020, we're going to have a lot of us, and myself included, we're going to be sitting there in August thinking, okay, before the cold winter months gets here, am I going to be, managing a gas station, or am I going to be, flipping burgers at a local whatever? Because those jobs are out there and they will be there coming back. It's just a question of what's a person going to need to do to, make it through to the eventual opening up of our businesses. A couple of questions here on Facebook. Kevin, thank you for joining us, Kevin. Do you carry multiple laptops? In my situation, I run virtual DJ. Not that matters, but that question comes up, and so I'm going to head that off. And no, I don't run Megasig at events anymore. Yeah, you're welcome for that, Dan. So I carry 2 laptops. Actually, one of them is my MacBook. I think it's a 2013, my MacBook Pro, and it's actually sitting right here because we used it for a music show, and we'll be doing that again. My backup is a MacBook Air, a 2017 MacBook Air, whatever it is. I have a couple of different, my external hard drives are the same hard drive. It's just I've got 2 different, or 2 copies of it that are with me. And then I have a thumb drive that has my most played songs. I think there's about 2,000 songs that at one time, a year and a half or 2 years ago, was all of the songs that I had ever played. They're on a thumb drive. So main laptop, second laptop. Worst case scenario, if I had to go to Best Buy and buy a laptop, I could throw the MP3 thumb drive in, and that could function, or utilize somebody else's. But really, number 3 is iPad. I've got a big iPad with a huge hard drive in. That is the backup for the selfie booth, and it's the backup for the DJ system, and it also can run the lights too if I needed to do that, because I've got a small iPad that runs the lights. If I have lights, I've got the one for the selfie thing, and then I have that one as my checking Facebook. Oh wait, we don't do that during gigs.
No, we use our phone.
Yeah, we use our phone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now, ladies and gentlemen, hang on. I can't finish the bridal introduction because I've got to like this post. There we go. No, not that that's ever happened.
That was a good post.
Yeah, Joseph, nothing
Johnny
wrong
Young
with
and
flipping
Dan
burgers.
Carpenter.
Got to do what you got to do. And this is where we are, as big boys and girls, we've got to do what we need to do to take care of our families and be there to live another day is probably the biggest thing. Because we will get through this. It's not like it's the end of the world. It's just an incredible bump. An incredible bump. But as John said, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, is that this has been a time where we've experienced things, we've seen things, we've done things that would have never happened. And in many cases, these are good things. You know, that time to sit down and work with my fourth grader on his math and find out that that he knows a lot of things about it, and finding out how, as an educator, which direction I can take him and where I can push him and how I can do this. And is it a more of an authoritative approach he needs, or is it more of a cheerleader, or is it more of a advisor? You know, there's so many different teaching styles that a person can use when it comes to children, and finding the one that works. I would have never figured that out as just a dad going to teachers conferences. But now that's one of those little gifts that it'll be like, oh, wow, that was really cool. So with all there are always bright spots in those silver linings in those clouds out there. So yeah. David, do you carry a backup laptop? I carry because I carry the iPad, and then, oh yeah, I forgot to mention number 4 is actually my phone, because my phone has got that same 2,000 songs on it. So technically, because I use Virtual DJ, I carry 4 backups and the thumb drive. DJing virtual events, Jazzy, I'll tell you next Monday. And I say this is because Saturday night we are doing a virtual prom here in central Minnesota. Between Michael, my son, and myself, we were doing 4 of the area proms. They're all canceled, of course. So what we've done is we have put together an event, and we're going to stream the event out there, and it's going to be a kind of a private event that we're sharing the links to the schools or the kids there that are going to be coming. And the idea is it's from 8 to 10 Central Time, and we're advising the kids to go and get dressed up, go, get together with your date and just your date, because these kids are, as a couple, they're probably still seeing each other. If there's a romantic relationship, they're still seeing each other. Get dressed up, go and to one house or the other, and have dinner at the house, enjoy a meal. And then once the meal's over, from 8 to 10, we'll have a little bit of a dance, and we'll keep it clean and family friendly. So if they end up putting it on a living room TV, whatever, they can do whatever they want, or if they just watch, I don't know, however they're going to do it. If they end up sitting there and watching it on a phone, that's what they're going to do. The idea is we're going to do the split screen in some ways like MJ does, where you're going to have the music video, you're going to have the picture, the DJ doing their thing, and the controller and some lighting going on. So it should look cool. We're going to have a feed of their shout outs and any of the music requests and the such that they're going to put. We'll have a feed of that scrolling on through. So it should be an interesting experiment. My feeling is that I'm going to have more parents than kids watching it. I think I'm going to have more people who are in their 40s watching this thing over the weekend than I'm going to have kids. Which, if that's the case, then we're going to branch off, and then the following, couple of weeks, we'll once the proms are over, then we'll probably do like a retro 80s night for the parents who are stuck at home. Especially if no one's getting out yet. Jazzy, what I'm going to do for streaming, and I mentioned this earlier, so I apologize for those of you who heard it. We're going to stream on YouTube. And the thing with YouTube is that as soon as it's done, I'm deleting the video before spiders get a chance to start flagging it. I'm going to delete it off the channel. We're going to do a Twitch. We're going to send to Twitch TV. I don't do as much with Twitch, so I don't know exactly how that's going to function and how long it's going to last, but that one will be there. And then I'm going to try to set up a Mixcloud. Mixcloud is now allowing videos to be streamed there. So I'm going to set up Mixcloud also. So I want to try to stream to those 3 spots for Saturday night. Ideally, we're going to practice with our 80s show Friday night, which will be open for DJs. If that works, that'll be kind of an interesting experiment, and we'll see how things go. Yes, Robin mentions the chill room, djntv.com/chill. She put that link in the comments there. You guys can join. There's going to be a lot of folks bouncing over to the chill room here once our video is done.
I'm excited to see how your prom goes.
Yeah, that should be interesting because when I floated the idea past the schools, they all loved the idea, but two of the schools were like, "But we are not going to endorse it because we don't want the kids getting together. If they're not supposed to get together in school, we don't want them getting together off campus." Makes perfect sense. I get that. The thing is, these kids are still. I mean, as an example, Michael, my son, he's got a young lady friend, and he when I don't remember where maybe we went up to Fargo when we moved Brandon back. Michael basically then sequestered himself at the house for a couple of weeks, and he didn't go see to make sure that everything was good and clear and such before he went and saw her. But he goes and sees her a couple of times a week and such. So his kids are still seeing each other. It's just that he goes over there and they hang out, or she comes over here and they hang out. There isn't the going there and then going out to eat here and then going walking the mall there, and those types of things aren't what they're doing. So I think a lot of the kids are. And if the parents are like, hey, you should do this, and the kids can, again, get dressed up, they can have a meal, they can take some pictures, it could work.
I've been wanting to do something similar, not just trying to the logistics of it all. Just something to get back because I have a couple, like our babysitter is for our boys is a senior at the local school. And it's just, watching some of her stories and just kind of, seeing them just like, I gotta do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it? Was it this past weekend that John Krasinski from The Office, that he was doing I don't know if he did an actual prom, if he played an actual prom set or if he was just doing a spoof of a prom, but it's like, as we've been putting the idea together and then we saw him doing that hit the news feeds and it's like, oh, man, that would suck because if he actually is doing one and he's actually playing the music and such and doing it like a real prom, who's going to watch us? Nobody will, because the only thing we've got then is, local shout outs,
I think he played, he wasn't mixing, but he played music during the time. He had special guests come in and then there was an after party. And I can't remember the DJ that he had, but it was a national type act.
Oh,
that played the after party. So,
yeah, interesting. Yeah, they're having fun in the chat. So, well, thank you guys for being with us tonight and hanging out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as John started out in the very beginning, our intention was not to be Debbie Downer with us. The intention is not to be doom and gloom or anything along those lines, but to recognize that, this could be a very viable thing for you to provide food for yourself, to provide maybe a little bit extra comfortable living, and to help prepare yourself for who knows what happens in the future, whether this rears its ugly head or whether it's 5 years down the road and something else does. Being able to set yourself up in a good position so that you can get through it without batting an eye and not thinking twice. Ideally, that's what we're really hoping for everybody that's in this, because we love you and we want you to continue doing what you love. And so we've got to help you find ways to be able to do that. So I'm just going to say one thing. If this is kind of a side note and I didn't tell John I was going to do this, but if you're questioning, some of the part-time stuff and obviously I have experience with that. Feel free to reach out to me, send me a message,
Sure.
Let me know. And I'd love to, talk with you to help you get through this, because it can be a tough time and it can be difficult, but we've got your back and I just want you to know that we're here for you.
And I believe, I still think the Disc Jockey News email is up, Dan Carpenter at discjockeynews.com. You guys can send an email there and that will get to Dan. Jesse had one more question. If the stream event works well, do you think this will be the new way to DJ events? I think you're going to see some of this come in. There is also a real big push right now for the completely automated. And we've talked about this automated system where basically a bar has a system that's connected to social media. And as people come in, they can register that they're there and in essence, check in. The software will find this. They'll look at their history, and it'll create profiles. One thing that's not talked about is that there's a company that's ready to launch this and are aiming for August. If this capability, this is something we've talked about for 2 or 3 years now, and Drax talked about it heavily. The idea of software being able to look at the dance floor with a webcam, see what's going on, and make adjustments on the fly. This is what somebody's trying to put together, because they're thinking that once this is done, that clubs aren't going to be able to afford a DJ, but they're going to want something better than the Bose, the Bose Tone Plus or whatever that system is that the bars are doing right now. That they're going to want something that's a little more. They can set genre specific things, and then they can go and let it do its thing. So I think we're going to see a different way of how DJing's working, and people surprisingly are responding well. I mean, look at what was it? One of the DJs that finished up the Marquee show that night later in the evening had close to 30,000 people watching live during the show. People are comfortable doing that. It's a weird world. So yeah, Jazzy, it's going to be a different world when we get done with that, and that's another reason why diversifying, getting yourself ready so that you can either move left or right when this is done is, I think, very important. So thank you for the questions. Thank you much for the questions. Dan, wrap us up.
All right. Well, on that note, again, thank you very much for taking time to join us and being a part of this evening. Of course, djntv.com/chill for the chill room. You can check that out here in just a few moments, and we will be back next Monday. Have yourself a good one.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.